Chris Christie's chances. Bob, what do you make of it? This new poll, New Hampshire poll, Republican presidential primary. Donald Trump at 43, Ron DeSantis at 9, and so is Chris Christie.
Listen, I mean, he's got to do well in that state. Do I see a path to the nomination for Chris Christie? No, because the base doesn't trust him. At the same time, he's very plain-spoken, like Donald Trump. He doesn't do nuance. He doesn't talk like a politician. It's working, and he's landing blows on Trump. But he's Chris Christie, and the Republican base doesn't like him. That's why I don't see it going anywhere.
I'll say that he would be very competitive in the general election. He would have every chance against Joe Biden. And I was thinking about this earlier. You know, New Hampshire always wants to do something different than Iowa. But if New Hampshire goes for Christie, they pick almost all of the Republican presidents, right, Chris?
New Hampshire does, as they like to say of Iowa, and it's mean, but they say, we don't pick corn, we pick presidents, and all of that stuff. The importance of this debate for Christie, so Trump has a decision to make about whether he's going to debate. Frontrunners sometimes don't do the first debate. That's not a new thing. That's not a new idea. Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, other past frontrunners have opted not to enter into the first debates. Trump, though, because of his legal problems, faces that, and with Chris Christie out there heckling him, that he's going to be called a chicken, he's going to say that he's hiding from something. But if you're Trump, I think here's what you want if you don't debate. You want Chris Christie to be just pummeling Trump, out there attacking Trump, and then watch who else on the stage will defend Trump. And that would be an interesting moment on that stage to see, will it be Vivek Ramaswamy? Who will be the people that will marshal their support for Trump? And that would, Trump already said he's going to do it as a VP, as a running mate audition. And Christie could end up playing the foil in that.
Back to those comments from Donald Trump. Here was the response from Chris Christie on Twitter about the comments about Chris Christie's weight. Chris Christie wrote, quote, "If you had the guts, you would show up to the debate and say it to my face." You talk to people, though, and they will say that Chris Christie believes that Donald Trump does not want to debate him, and that Chris Christie essentially is starting to lay the groundwork for that.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, Chris Christie, to me, acts like he would be perfectly happy to debate Donald Trump. I'm actually really interested in his specific retort too, because one of the things that I've wondered is, how are these candidates going to actually directly respond to these personal insults? It kind of took everybody by surprise the first time around. And Chris Christie is really, I think, it was actually a perfect response, which is, I struggle with my weight. Americans struggle with their weight. Why are you attacking me? You're really attacking them. And that's really been Donald Trump is saying, you know, people are coming after me and I'm really you. And Chris Christie's kind of flipping the tables on that. So I think that the way he's responding is actually very useful and a good example for other candidates.
He's been to Ukraine. He's all in New Hampshire. He's doing all that stuff. Bob, the sage, is very right that you don't see the path. He's the most disliked of all the candidates. He has the highest negatives. But I will say this, some of those negatives are people who mistrust him because of his association with Trump before. Right. So some of that 60% or so of Republicans who have negative attitudes about Christie in polls, some of them are people who are Trumpos, who love Trump and they think Christie's a traitor. But others are the other way, and he might have a way into the discussion in New Hampshire. And if Chris Sununu, I mean, you can see how something could happen.
See it.
You
and
could see
honestly, if you even talk about like the abortion question, he's got the best answer, which is the states don't even have a solution on this. Federal government shouldn't have a solution until they figure it out.
This is why he's not in second place in Iowa.
Well,
that's why he's not in second place in Iowa.
But if Trump doesn't show up, I mean, based upon what Christie did to Marco Rubio in 2016, Christie is a very good debater and arguably the best one on the stage if Trump is
if I mixed up the names there, you talk to people who say that Donald Trump doesn't want to see Chris Christie debate him. I might have mixed up the names, but in any event, it's that point that he buried Marco Rubio and his chances in that debate.
I don't want to take anything away from Governor Christie's performance in that debate, but Marco Rubio took himself out of that. It wasn't Chris Christie, and by the time Chris Christie put Chris Christie was like when you roast a turkey, that last little thing goes blip and pops out. That debate was that popping out on Marco Rubio.
What do you think Christie could do in a debate against Trump? Last thoughts.
I think if he is in Trump's head and he can harass and annoy Trump, and Trump feels obliged to answer him, that Christie could keep Trump off of his game, and that creates interesting opportunities for other people.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.